He was born into wealth, raised in poverty, and found love in disguise. But when the truth comes out, will the woman who loved the man still trust the name behind the fortune? Hello family, welcome to Storytime with Imzi. Please subscribe and like, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The cold wind of the early morning sliced through the narrow alleyways of Solace City like a thief in the night. The city was waking up. Car horns began their chorus, neon signs flickered back to life, and shopkeepers rolled up steel shutters with yawns and reluctant hands. Amidst this routine hum of life, a boy named Eli was already on the move. His clothes were threadbare and layered in mismatched fashion. An old coat several sizes too big, frayed jeans patched up with hand-sewn squares, and a woolen cap that had long since lost its shape. He walked with a limp barely noticeable to the unaware, a remnant of a fall he'd taken years ago. One of the other orphans had dared him to climb the rusted scaffolding near the rail yard. He'd won the dare, but at a cost. Clutched tightly in his fist was a paper bag holding 2 stale rolls of bread. He'd worked since sunrise helping Mrs. Conway, the grocer, unload crates for her store. In return, she handed him the bread and a coin, just one. Enough for one more night at the shelter if they had space. Enough for one more meal if he stretched it. The streets were no stranger to Eli. He knew where the warm steam vents lay under the grates, which restaurants tossed out still edible food, and which cops would let him loiter without trouble. He knew which people to avoid, especially the ones with too smooth smiles and fast hands. But for all that life had taken from him, it hadn't taken his heart. As he passed a cafe with fogged-up windows, he paused and stared at the families inside. Children laughing, parents sipping coffee, warmth radiating from every pane of glass. He didn't hate them. He didn't even envy them. He simply wondered, what does that feel like? He asked himself. He reached under his coat and pulled out the only thing he'd had since before he could walk, a small, heart-shaped locket, dented but intact. He clicked it open and looked at the photo inside. A woman's face smiled back at him, eyes gentle, hair cascading over her shoulders like a waterfall. Her identity was a mystery, but Eli stared at her like one might stare at a star on a dark night. Distant, unreachable, but constant. The orphanage matron, long dead now, once told him that he'd been found wrapped in a blanket with that locket clutched in his tiny hand. No note. No explanation. Just the trinket and a name stitched into the hem of the blanket, Eli. He stuffed the locket back inside his coat and pushed forward. He had another job today, stacking pallets behind a factory. It paid little, but enough to survive. Just as he turned the corner, he heard a scuffle. 2 boys, both older and stronger than him, had cornered a frail homeless man in a wheelchair. One was laughing as he yanked a brown leather satchel from the man's lap. "Give it up, old man. You got nothing worth talking, huh?" Eli didn't think. He never did when someone was in trouble. "Hey!" he shouted, sprinting forward with reckless courage. The boys turned, surprised. Eli tackled one of them, the smaller of the 2, straight into a pile of trash bags. The other lunged at him, swinging wildly. Eli ducked, grabbed a broken broomstick, and jabbed it toward the boy's ribs. Not hard, but enough to make him back off. "Come on, man," the bigger one growled to his partner. "Not worth it." They ran. Eli bent down, picked up the satchel, and handed it to the old man. "Here. Are you okay?" The man, trembling, stared at him with glassy blue eyes. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," Eli replied simply. "No one should be treated like trash." The old man took his hand, studying his face carefully, too carefully. "What's your name, son?" "Eli." The man's fingers tightened slightly around Eli's hand. A flicker of emotion crossed his face, something like recognition, or perhaps hope. But he said nothing more. Eli offered a small nod and turned to leave, the encounter already fading into one of many in his long, gray days. But what he didn't see, couldn't have seen, was the old man pulling a small, faded photograph from the satchel and holding it next to the window light. It was a photo of a baby boy wrapped in a distinctive patterned blanket, the same one Eli had worn in infancy. The man's voice, barely a whisper, trembled with awe. "It can't be, but those eyes, those eyes." The next morning, the sky hung low with a thick quilt of gray clouds, heavy with the promise of rain. Eli was crouched behind the railyard warehouse, stacking wooden crates that smelled of rust and old oil. His breath came in steady puffs, visible in the cold. His fingers, numb from hours of work, trembled as he tried to tie down the last crate with coarse rope. But despite the ache in his muscles, his thoughts kept drifting back to the old man from yesterday. There was something strange about him. The way he'd stared. The way he'd spoken Eli's name. Not with casual curiosity, but with weight, like a name half remembered from a dream long ago. Probably just another old man with ghosts, Eli thought. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. That something had followed him out of that alley. Not a person, but a question. He wiped the sweat from his brow and stood upright, cracking his stiff back. That's when he noticed the car. It wasn't just any car. It was a sleek black vehicle, parked on the edge of the rail yard, gleaming like polished obsidian. No one around here owned something like that. Not in this part of town. And standing beside it was a man in a gray wool coat, tall and dignified, holding a black umbrella against the now drizzling sky. "Eli," the man called, scanning the lot. His voice was crisp, clipped, and unfamiliar. Eli froze. People didn't come looking for him. Not unless they wanted him gone. "Who's asking?" he said cautiously, grabbing his coat. "I'm Mr. Randall. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Hawthorne." He pulled a business card from his coat and offered it. "He'd like to see you. Privately. Today." Eli took the card, squinting at the gold lettering. Hawthorne Industries. The name meant nothing to him. Just another corporate giant with shiny towers downtown. "Look, I think you've got the wrong guy," Eli muttered, already backing away. "I didn't apply for any job or—" "You're not in trouble," Mr. Randall interrupted gently. "You saved a man yesterday. A man very few people would have helped. That man is Mr. Arthur Hawthorne. He believes he knows who you are." Eli narrowed his eyes. "And who does he think I am?" Mr. Randall simply nodded toward the car. "He'd like to tell you himself." The interior of the car smelled like leather and cedarwood. Clean, clinical, expensive. Eli sat stiffly, one hand on the door handle like it might disappear if he needed to run. When they pulled up to a towering estate on the city's northern ridge, the kind of place he'd only seen in newspapers and television, he thought it had to be a mistake. The gates creaked open, and the car rolled up a curved driveway flanked by marble statues and trimmed hedges that looked like they'd never met a fallen leaf in their lives. Inside the house, everything glowed. Chandeliers dripped light from the ceilings like liquid crystal. Polished floors stretched like mirrors. A butler in black gloves ushered him silently to a large study lined with ancient books and a fire crackling in a stone hearth. And there, sitting in a high-backed chair beside the fire, was the man from the alley, now dressed in a tailored navy suit, eyes alert but kind. "You came," the man said, his voice warmer than before. Eli didn't sit. "What is this? Some kind of weird charity?" "No," the man replied quietly. "This is family." Eli blinked. "What?" The man stood, walked slowly toward a tall cabinet, and opened a drawer. He took out a file and handed Eli a photograph, the same woman from his locket. But this time she wasn't alone. She was holding a baby. "That's your mother," the man said softly. "My daughter." Eli's legs went weak. "I lost them in a fire 20 years ago. We thought no one had survived, until yesterday, when I saw your eyes." His voice faltered. "Your eyes are hers." Eli's heart thundered in his chest. You're saying I'm? Eli Hawthorne, the old man said, tears welling. You're not just my grandson. You're my only heir. Eli didn't sleep that night. He lay in a guest room bigger than the entire orphanage he grew up in, staring at the gilded ceiling, surrounded by things he'd never owned, soft sheets, warmth without struggle, silence without fear. But in his mind, he was still a boy in the alley, clutching a stale loaf of bread and wondering why the world had given him so little. Now he was being told it had always been his. And somewhere inside him, a door creaked open, a door he hadn't known existed. Beyond it was a name, a legacy, and a life about to change forever. The tie was too tight. Eli tugged at the knot as he stood in front of the mirror in his grandfather's penthouse. The skyline sprawled behind him like a glittering illusion. The suit fit perfectly, custom-stitched imported wool. But it didn't feel like his skin. It felt like armor. He turned away. Since becoming Eli Hawthorne, heir to an empire he didn't grow up in, every room had been full of eyes, watching, calculating. His phone buzzed constantly with invitations from people who suddenly remembered his name. There were whispers of mergers, inheritance, eligible heiresses. He didn't trust any of it. One evening, as the sun sank behind the tower's edge, Ms. Delaney arrived with a folder. Your grandfather wants you to choose someone for the gala, she said, offering it like a loaded weapon. A date, ideally. Public image. Eli didn't take it. I don't want someone who loves the name, he said. Then you'll have to meet someone who doesn't know it, she replied. Her voice was calm, precise. She handed him a second paper. Carlton Dynamics. Tech partner. No one there will recognize you. He looked at the file. A plan was already forming in his mind. 3 days later, Eli stood outside Carlton Dynamics in worn boots and a plain hoodie, the building's reflective glass casting his image back at him. Not as the heir, but the man he used to be. He passed through security unnoticed and received a badge, a locker key, and a job, tech maintenance. The simplicity of it calmed him. By noon, he was in the basement, checking cooling fans, his hands dusty, the hum of servers steady around him. No one fawned. No one cared. It was the first honest air he'd breathed in weeks. Then he saw her. Vivian Carlton walked past him without a glance, her heels clicking, her expression stiff with disdain as her eyes flicked over his clothes. Her badge sparkled. Her perfume lingered like a warning. He returned to his work. Moments later, another figure passed. Softer steps. No perfume. This one paused beside him, hugging a folder to her chest. She smiled, a little crooked, unsure. You're new. Eli looked up. Her badge read Clara. Yeah, he said. I'm Clara, she offered. Eli. She nodded, eyes warm. Nice to meet you, Eli. And just like that, without effort or performance, someone saw him. Not the heir, just the man. The cafeteria was bright, sterile, and filled with the low hum of conversation. Eli sat alone at the edge, eating from a plastic container of rice and chicken, eyes occasionally drifting toward the far table where Clara sat. She was laughing. Not the rehearsed kind he'd grown used to. It was real, open, almost clumsy. She was telling a story with her hands, animated and unaware of the way the room softened around her. The people at her table leaned in without knowing they were doing it. Across from her sat Vivian. Vivian Carlton didn't laugh. She watched. Assessed. Her eyes moved like cold glass over everyone at the table, her smile more like a practiced twitch. When Clara leaned toward her with a grin, Vivian offered a tight nod in return and sipped from her glass like she couldn't wait for the conversation to end. Eli caught her glance. She noticed him watching. Her eyes narrowed, not in interest, in irritation. Like he'd broken an unspoken rule just by existing in her line of sight. She leaned toward Clara, whispering something. Clara glanced over. Their eyes met again, hers and Eli's. She smiled. Vivian didn't. Later that day, Eli was fixing a loose panel near the south stairwell when Clara passed by. She paused, arms full of reports, her cardigan sleeve slipping past her elbow. "You're everywhere," she teased. "I'm just fixing things," he said. "Lots of things need fixing." Clara smiled. "That's true." Vivian's voice sliced through the hallway before he saw her. "Clara," she said briskly, appearing like a shadow with heels. "You're late for the client review." Clara looked at Eli briefly, then back to her sister. "I'm coming." Vivian's eyes met Eli's. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her look said everything. "Stay in your place." Eli watched her walk away, shoulders straight, chin high, Clara trailing behind like a flower pulled by a storm. But Clara glanced back once. Just once. And smiled again. The break room smelled faintly of burnt coffee and plastic. Eli stood by the sink, rinsing out a cracked mug, when Clara entered carrying 2 cups. She held one out to him. "This one's actually drinkable." He raised an eyebrow. "Are you bribing me?" "Depends," she said. "Are you worth bribing?" He smirked and took the cup. Their fingers brushed. Just briefly. But it lingered in the air between them. They sat on the worn bench near the vending machine. Clara curled her legs beneath her, completely at ease. Eli stayed upright, unsure if he should. "I never see you at any of the company parties," she said. "I don't get invited," he replied. "You're lucky," she smiled. "They're exhausting. Everyone wants something from someone." He looked at her carefully. "And you?" "I just want people to be honest," she said, eyes steady. It silenced him. Not because the answer was bold, but because it was exactly what he'd been searching for. Over the next few days, they crossed paths more often. Sometimes by accident. Sometimes not. He helped her carry boxes. She brought him an extra sandwich. They started sharing inside jokes. Short glances. Longer silences that didn't feel awkward. Vivian noticed. One afternoon, she caught Clara outside the elevator. "That technician," she said, her voice crisp. "You've been talking to him." Clara blinked. "Eli." "Yeah." Vivian's lips tightened. "Be careful. People like that are temporary. They don't belong in our world." Clara met her gaze. "Maybe our world needs a little more of theirs." The elevator dinged. Neither of them stepped inside. Rain tapped against the office windows like a quiet warning. Eli was in the server room, hands buried in a tangled mass of cables, when Clara appeared in the doorway, her umbrella dripping, her hair slightly damp. "Hey," she said, a little breathless. He stood up. "You okay?" She nodded. "I told my father I've been spending time with someone." Eli's chest tightened. "He asked who," she continued. "I said your name. That was a mistake." Eli waited. "Vivian heard," Clara added. She was furious. Said I was embarrassing the family. That I'm throwing everything away over a guy who screws panels into walls. Eli looked down. "And what do you think?" Clara took a step closer. Her voice was quieter now. "I don't care what you do. I just care who you are." The words hung between them, fragile and warm. He wanted to tell her everything, to strip away the lie, the mask, the name he'd buried. But not yet. Not like this. Not until he was sure. That night, back at the estate, Eli stood in front of the fireplace, staring into the embers. His grandfather entered the room, watching him from the doorway. "You've met someone," Arthur said. Eli didn't answer. "You're afraid she won't want you if she knows the truth?" the old man asked. "No," Eli said softly. "I'm afraid she'll only want me because of it." The ballroom shimmered under chandeliers, crystal catching light like 1,000 tiny stars. Hawthorne Industries' annual gala was in full swing. Suits, gowns, champagne flutes, conversations laced with ambition. Eli stood near the staircase, dressed in a black tailored suit, every line of him polished and poised. Clara entered with her family. Her eyes searched the crowd and landed on him. Her mouth parted slightly, confused. Vivian froze beside her. That's not, she whispered. That's the technician? No, her father said slowly, recognition dawning. That's Eli Hawthorne. The name rippled through the crowd like a dropped stone in still water. Eli stepped forward. The room seemed to quiet as he approached Clara. You lied, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I hid, he corrected gently, so I could find the truth. She looked away, hurt flickering across her face. Vivian stepped in, smiling with sudden warmth. Eli, Mr. Hawthorne. If I'd known. You did know, he said, turning to her. You just didn't care until my name changed. Vivian's face fell, the smile withering into silence. Eli turned back to Clara. I meant everything I said. Everything I felt. And if you still believe I'm the same man you met by that broken panel, then I'm still here. Clara hesitated. Then slowly she reached for his hand. And in that crowded golden room, filled with gasps and regrets, the only thing that mattered was her fingers closing around his. The garden behind the Hawthorne estate was quiet, lit by soft lanterns and the last breath of twilight. Petals floated in the fountain. Musicians played something slow and old beneath the ivy-covered arch. Clara stood beneath it in a simple ivory dress. Eli, in a dark suit with no tie, stood across from her. No mask, no pretense. Just Eli. Their vows were spoken softly, hands held tight, the words meant only for each other. When the kiss came, the guests clapped. Some out of joy, some out of shock. Vivian sat at the edge of the crowd, hands folded in her lap, her smile tight and empty. Her parents said little, glancing between each other and the man they'd once dismissed. After the ceremony, Eli approached them. I didn't do this to prove anything, he said. But I hope it proved something anyway. Mr. Carlton nodded stiffly. We underestimated you. You didn't know me, Eli replied. You only saw the jacket I wore. He turned to Clara, who smiled like she always had, without calculation, without conditions. The two of them walked away from the crowd, hand in hand, the night warm around them. No titles, no fortune, just truth, and the kind of love you can't buy.